"Do you only think about what's under my skirt?" asked the Apache woman to the Bashful Cowboy. The morning sun had just begun to rise over the quiet frontier town of Red Willow. The wooden buildings, still dark from the early hour, stood silent except for the soft creak of signs swaying gently in the cool breeze. Smoke curled lazily from a few chimneys, carrying the scent of fresh bread and coffee from the bakery at the corner. The town was small but busy in its own gentle way, where everyone knew everyone else, and every stranger was noticed the moment they arrived. Among the early risers was a woman named Maya. She was an Apache woman, strong, confident, and used to moving through the world with her own sense of purpose. Her long dark hair was tied neatly, and her eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the surroundings as she guided her horse down the main street. Today she had come to Red Willow for trading. She carried some handcrafted jewelry, small tools, and a few bundles of dried herbs. She knew the value of each item, and she also knew the value of her own time and effort. Life for her had taught her to be careful, but it had also taught her to stand tall no matter where she went. At the same time, Ethan, a young cowboy, was preparing his horse outside the general store. He was a shy and quiet man, unlike the loud, brash cowboys that often rode through towns like Red Willow. Ethan had a gentle nature, and he preferred to avoid confrontation whenever he could. Most people in town thought he was strange because he rarely spoke first and blushed easily, especially around women. But Ethan had a good heart. He believed in helping others whenever he could, even if it sometimes made him awkward. The paths of Maya and Ethan were about to cross in a way neither of them expected. As Maya led her horse toward the marketplace, she noticed a small commotion near the well. Ethan was struggling to hold open a crate of supplies that had fallen from a wagon. The horses had been restless, and the morning air had brought small problems that seemed to multiply quickly. Seeing the young cowboy trying so hard, Maya offered a hand, stepping closer with confidence. "Need a hand?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Ethan looked up, startled, and immediately felt his face heat up. He had not expected anyone to notice him yet, especially not a woman with such a strong presence. Yes, please," he stammered, fumbling with the crate. His hands shook slightly, betraying his nervousness. Maya smiled faintly but remained focused. She reached out and helped him lift the crate back onto the wagon. Her strength made the task easy, and Ethan felt both relief and embarrassment at how clumsy he had appeared. "Thanks," he said quietly, trying to regain his composure. I didn't see that coming." Maya raised an eyebrow but said nothing at first. She studied him for a moment. There was something unusual about this cowboy. He was not rude, not loud, not showy. Yet he seemed so nervous. It was almost as if he were trying very hard to be polite but kept failing in small ways. Maya had met men like that before, and she knew that appearances could be deceiving. "I've been to towns like this before," she said finally. "People rush, they push, they think only of themselves. You are different, aren't you?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard. No one had ever described him that way before. He shook his head shyly. I try to be," he said softly. I don't like hurting anyone. I get nervous sometimes." Maya nodded slightly. She could tell he was telling the truth. There was an honesty in his eyes that could not be hidden, even by awkwardness. But there was also something else, a hesitation, a kind of timidness that made her think he might misunderstand her presence. She adjusted the heavy pack on her horse and stepped a little closer, keeping her eyes on him. "It's rare to see someone like you in a place like this," she said. "You might be shy, but you are aware. You notice things. That is a good quality." Ethan's ears turned red. He had never been praised for noticing things. People often called him clumsy or quiet, sometimes even useless. But here was this strong, confident woman acknowledging him in a way that felt almost magical. He felt both flustered and grateful. I try to help," he said, stumbling over his words. If someone needs it, I try." Maya tilted her head, studying him more closely. She said thoughtfully. It seems you are polite, but sometimes your politeness can be misunderstood. Ethan's eyes widened. Misunderstood? How? He asked, voice trembling slightly. Maya's expression hardened for a moment, not with anger but with seriousness. Sometimes, people judge by what they see, not what they know. They might think different things about you than what is true. Even a kind man can be seen as something he is not. Ethan swallowed hard. He wanted to say something clever, something to reassure her that he meant no harm, but the words failed him. His shyness held him back, and all that came out was a quiet, I don't mean harm, I promise. Maya's eyes softened slightly. She sensed his honesty, but there was a flicker of something she had felt too often in towns like this, a kind of unspoken prejudice that she was used to facing. It made her cautious. She wanted to trust him, but she also needed to assert herself. You must be careful, she said firmly. Not everyone sees what is true. Sometimes people assume the worst, and sometimes men only see what they want to see. Her voice grew sharper, though still controlled. She stepped slightly closer, so her presence was undeniable. Do you only think about what's under my skirt? She asked, her gaze piercing, challenging him. Ethan froze. His heart thumped in his chest and his face turned crimson. He had never been accused of anything like this, and the sudden question caught him completely off guard. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His mind raced, trying to find the right explanation, the right defense, but all that escaped was a weak, Maya did not wait. She took a step back, giving him space but keeping her gaze sharp. Answer me, she said firmly. Be honest. Are you only thinking about that? Or do you respect me? Ethan's chest heaved. He knew he had to answer to clear the misunderstanding, but the words felt heavy in his mouth. I respect you, he said finally, his voice small but sincere. I was thinking that. I was just nervous. I didn't mean to. Maya's eyes softened again. She could see the genuine fear and honesty in him. He was not like the others she had met in towns like this, rude men who assumed too much. He was shy, yes, but honest, and honesty was something she valued more than bravado. I see, she said quietly. Sometimes shyness can be mistaken for something else. But words matter and people must understand each other. Do you understand? Ethan nodded quickly, relief washing over him. Yes, I understand. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Maya gave a small nod. She didn't smile fully, but there was a hint of approval in her expression. Very well. Let this be a lesson for both of us, she said. Sometimes assumptions lead to trouble, and sometimes courage means speaking even when it is difficult. Ethan felt a strange mixture of shame and admiration. Shame for being misunderstood, admiration for her strength and clarity. He wanted to say more, to tell her that he had always respected women and that he had never thought anything improper, but his shyness stopped him. Instead, he simply nodded again, hoping she understood. For a moment, the marketplace was silent except for the sounds of the town waking up, the creak of wagon wheels, the clatter of horses' hooves, and the distant barking of a dog. In that silence, an unspoken understanding passed between them. Maya saw the truth in him, and Ethan saw the power in her words. Finally, Maya turned to continue toward the trading post, her horse steady beneath her. Ethan watched her go, still fumbling with words in his mind, wishing he could express everything he felt. He realized that the first impression, though awkward and tense, had been important. It had forced honesty, attention, and awareness. As they moved on with their day, both of them carried the memory of that moment. For Maya, it was a reminder to always assert herself and protect her dignity, even in moments of uncertainty. For Ethan, it was a lesson in courage, the courage to speak honestly, even when his voice shook and his face burned. Though the encounter had been awkward and tense, it had also planted a seed of respect, awareness, and perhaps, in time, friendship. Neither of them knew where it might lead, but both understood that first impressions could be misleading, and that understanding required patience, honesty, and attention. And so, the quiet town of Red Willow continued its morning routines, unaware of the small, powerful connection that had begun at the marketplace. Two people from very different worlds had met, misunderstood, and started to see each other clearly for the first time. It was a beginning, a delicate, cautious beginning of something that might grow into trust, respect, or even more. But for now, it was simply a lesson in honesty, courage, and human understanding, unfolding under the gentle warmth of the rising sun. The morning bustle of Red Willow continued, but the encounter between Maya and Ethan lingered in their minds like a shadow neither could shake. For Maya, the memory of the cowboy's awkward words and flushed face stayed with her as she moved through the marketplace. She watched the townspeople barter and gossip, aware of the quiet judgments that often hung over someone who looked different or behaved differently. The town was small, and rumors traveled fast, but she had learned to navigate these waters carefully. Today, though, she felt a twinge of curiosity about Ethan. He was not like the others. There was something honest about him that she could not ignore. Meanwhile, Ethan wandered the town with a heavy heart. His shyness, which had always been a quiet companion, now felt like a burden pressing down on him. He replayed the words Maya had spoken over and over in his mind. "Do you only think about what's under my skirt?" Her voice had been firm and sharp, a question meant to pierce through pretense. And though he had answered her truthfully, he felt as though he had failed somehow. The thought made him frown as he walked past the general store, tipping his hat at familiar faces but avoiding eye contact. Ethan wanted to understand Maya better. He wanted to show her that his respect was genuine, but he did not know how. His natural bashfulness turned every attempt at conversation into a maze of awkward pauses and stammered words. He knew he had to act carefully. One wrong word, one misplaced gesture, and the misunderstanding could grow rather than shrink. Maya, on the other hand, kept glancing back at the way he had moved, trying to read the truth behind his quiet demeanor. She was a woman accustomed to judging character quickly, having lived in both Apache communities and frontier towns. People who were rude, arrogant, or careless revealed themselves in subtle ways. Ethan, she noticed, did not. He did not try to impress, he did not boast, and he did not glance at her in a way that suggested anything improper. That was rare in Red Willow. As the morning wore on, Maya stopped at a small table outside a trading post to arrange her wares. She laid out bracelets, necklaces, and small bundles of dried herbs. Each item was carefully placed to catch the light and draw attention. She worked methodically, letting her mind wander as she waited for potential customers. And in the quiet moments, her thoughts inevitably drifted to Ethan. Why had he reacted so strongly to her question? She wondered. Most men, she knew, would have become defensive or rude. Some would even try to ignore the question entirely. But not him. His eyes had shown honesty, and though he had stumbled, there was no malice. Perhaps, she thought, some men were simply shy, and shyness could be mistaken for arrogance or worse. Ethan, meanwhile, had returned to the outskirts of town, sitting on a small bench near the stables. He tried to organize his thoughts, going over the morning's events in careful detail. He remembered every word Maya had spoken, every glance she had cast at him. He understood that she was testing him, trying to see if he was truthful, and he knew he had been clumsy. The townspeople, always watchful, had begun to notice the unusual interaction. Some whispered as Maya arranged her wares, others exchanged glances as Ethan avoided passing too close. Rumors could be dangerous in a town like Red Willow, but Ethan paid them no mind. His concern was entirely focused on Maya. He felt the need to prove that he was honorable, that he could be trusted. By mid-morning, Maya's little corner of the marketplace had attracted a few curious customers. She sold a few small items, exchanging polite words and careful smiles. Yet, even as she conducted business, she remained aware of the cowboy across the street, lingering by the stables. She could see his hands fidgeting with the reins of his horse, the way he kept glancing toward her without daring to approach. Maya felt a mixture of amusement and irritation. The man clearly wanted to speak with her, but he was trapped by his own shyness. Finally, she decided to address the matter herself. Closing her small ledger, she gathered her courage and walked slowly toward him. Each step made Ethan's heart race. He froze in place when he saw her approaching, unsure whether to stand or remain seated. Maya stopped a few feet away, her hands resting lightly on her hips. "You have been thinking about this," she said calmly, her eyes fixed on his face. "I can see it in your expression. You are trying to understand, but you are also worried. Is that true?" Ethan nodded quickly, his mouth dry. Yes, it's true," he admitted. I keep thinking about what you said. I don't want you to think that I am someone I'm not. I respect you, and I want you to know that." Maya studied him, noting the careful honesty in his words. "Words are one thing," she said. "Actions are another. People can say they mean well, but what they do shows the truth. Do you understand?" I understand," Ethan said quietly. I just don't know how to show it." Maya's gaze softened slightly. "It is not always easy," she said. "Respect is shown in small things, attention to what someone needs, listening carefully, being mindful of their space and their feelings. Even in simple actions, you can show respect." Ethan listened intently, taking in every word. For the first time, he felt as though someone was teaching him, guiding him without judgment. Maya's tone was firm but fair, and it gave him hope. He wanted to be worthy of that guidance. I want to learn," he said quietly. I want to do better." Maya considered his words for a long moment. "Very well," she said finally. "Then you must be patient with yourself. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting despite it. You were afraid this morning, but you spoke the truth. That is the first step." Ethan felt a small wave of relief wash over him. Her words were not only a comfort but also a challenge. He understood that respect and understanding required effort, attention, and honesty. He also realized that he had never encountered anyone like Maya before, someone who could challenge him without being cruel, who could teach without condescension. The two of them remained standing there for a moment, a quiet understanding settling between them. Around them, the town continued its morning rhythm. Horses clattered over wooden planks, vendors shouted their prices, and children ran past in the dust of the street. But in that small space, Ethan and Maya found a kind of stillness. Maya broke the silence with a small smile. "I think you will do well," she said. "But remember, being honest with yourself is just as important as being honest with others. Do not hide behind words or actions that are not true. You must learn to trust yourself." Ethan nodded, absorbing her words like sunlight. I will try," he said simply. I will remember." Maya stepped back slightly, preparing to return to her stall. "Good," she said. "Now go and be mindful of your actions. The town will watch and people will judge, but if you remain true, their opinions matter little." As she walked away, Ethan remained on the bench for a long moment, watching her disappear into the marketplace crowd. He felt a strange mix of admiration, respect, and a desire to prove himself worthy of her trust. For the first time, he realized that understanding someone required effort, courage, and humility. Meanwhile, Maya returned to her stall, arranging her wares and thinking about the shy cowboy who had so nervously stumbled in words. She smiled faintly to herself. The man had potential, she thought. Perhaps, if he continued to act with care and honesty, he could prove himself reliable and worthy of respect. And perhaps, she thought, the town could use a few more men like him, men who were quiet, thoughtful, and sincere. The morning continued, with the sun climbing higher and the town growing livelier. Ethan and Maya moved through the day, each in their own way, but the encounter had left a mark. For Ethan, it was a lesson in courage, honesty, and respect. For Maya, it was a reminder that not everyone was as they appeared, and sometimes patience and observation revealed truths that were not immediately obvious. By midday, both of them had learned something important. Ethan understood that respect required more than words. It required careful attention, awareness, and consistent action. Maya understood that first impressions, even awkward or tense ones, could reveal honesty and potential. And though the townspeople continued their routines, unaware of the subtle growth occurring between the two, a quiet bond had begun to form, fragile yet significant. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the wooden buildings, and the marketplace slowly emptied as the day progressed. Ethan finally mounted his horse and began to ride toward the outskirts of town, his mind racing with thoughts of what he could do next to prove himself. Maya packed her wares, preparing to leave the marketplace for a short rest before resuming her trade. Though they were apart, the memory of their exchange lingered, shaping their thoughts and actions. Both knew that this was only the beginning, a first step in a journey that would require honesty, courage, and understanding, and neither of them realized yet just how much their paths would intertwine in the days to come. The afternoon sun hung low over Red Willow, painting the town in warm shades of gold and amber. The streets, once crowded with morning bustle, were now quieter, though the occasional wagon rolled over the wooden planks and a horse clopped steadily along the dirt paths. For most townspeople, it was the calm part of the day, a time to finish chores, gather supplies, or sit in the shade and enjoy the breeze. For Maya and Ethan, however, the day was far from calm. Maya had just finished packing away her wares after a steady day of trading. She had sold a few necklaces and bracelets, and several of her herbs had drawn attention for their unique scent and quality. She moved with confidence, her movements fluid and purposeful. Life had taught her to handle challenges calmly, to observe situations, and to act when necessary. She felt satisfied with the day so far, though a quiet curiosity lingered in her mind about the shy cowboy she had met earlier that morning. Ethan, riding back toward the outskirts of town after checking on his horse, also felt a lingering curiosity. He had been thinking all day about Maya's words, the challenge, the lesson, and the unexpected honesty she had shown him. He knew that earning her trust would take time and consistent action. He wanted to prove that he could be reliable, that he could show respect not just in words but in deeds. It was then that trouble arrived. A sudden commotion erupted near the main street. A wagon had lost a wheel and tipped over, spilling crates of supplies into the dusty road. Horses neighed and stamped in alarm, kicking up clouds of dust. People shouted, trying to calm the animals and move out of the way. In the chaos, a small group of town children had wandered too close and were now at risk of being trampled. Maya, who was nearby, immediately sprang into action. Her training and natural courage guided her movements. She ran toward the scene, her eyes scanning for danger. One of the children was frozen with fear, unable to move from the path of the panicked horse. Without hesitation, Maya ran to the child and scooped them up, holding them safely out of the way. Her voice was firm but soothing. "It's okay, you're safe now." Ethan, who had been riding nearby, saw the danger and reacted instantly. Despite his bashfulness and quiet nature, he did not hesitate. He spurred his horse forward, carefully positioning himself to help guide the frightened animals away from the children. One horse, a large brown stallion, had broken free of its reins and was charging down the street. Ethan grabbed the lead rope just in time, speaking to the animal in calm, steady tones, his hands steady despite his nervousness. Maya noticed him immediately. She was impressed by his courage, but she also realized that coordinating with him would be necessary to resolve the situation safely. "Ethan, we need to move the horses together," she called, her voice carrying over the noise of panicked hooves and shouting townspeople. Ethan blinked at her name but nodded quickly. "Right, yes," he shouted, steering the runaway horse toward a clear space. The two moved in harmony, guiding the animals with careful, deliberate actions. Maya's strength and quick thinking complemented Ethan's steady hands and calm words. For the first time, they worked side by side, not as strangers but as partners facing a shared challenge. The townspeople watched in awe. Many had underestimated Ethan because of his quiet demeanor, but now they saw a different side of him. His shyness was gone, replaced by focus, courage, and careful attention to detail. Maya, too, impressed everyone with her bravery and quick thinking. Together they managed to calm the horses, secure the wagons, and guide the children safely away from harm. Once the immediate danger had passed, Maya turned to Ethan. "You handled yourself well," she said, her voice carrying both surprise and respect. I did not expect such steadiness from you." Ethan's face flushed, but he felt a warm sense of pride. Thank you," he stammered. I just wanted to help. I didn't want anyone to get hurt." Maya nodded. "And that is what matters. Actions speak louder than words, Ethan. You proved yourself today, not just to me but to everyone watching." Ethan shifted slightly, feeling a mix of relief and satisfaction. For the first time, he realized that courage was not about showing off or being loud. It was about acting when it mattered, even when fear and uncertainty were present. Maya's presence beside him had helped him stay focused, giving him a silent reassurance that he could trust his own instincts. As the crowd began to disperse, a few townspeople approached them with gratitude. "Thank you both," one of the merchants said. "You saved a lot of trouble today. The children, they could have been seriously hurt." Maya waved a hand dismissively. "It's nothing," she said, though the faint smile on her face suggested she appreciated the acknowledgement. Ethan, on the other hand, nodded politely, his face still red from the rush of adrenaline. After the chaos settled, Maya and Ethan walked together back toward the trading post. There was a quiet sense of connection between them now, born not from words but from shared experience. Maya looked at him thoughtfully. "You see, Ethan," she said, "respect is shown not only in calm words but also in action. Today you showed courage, attention, and care. That is respect in its truest form." Ethan felt a surge of gratitude. He had always wanted to be seen as reliable, as someone capable of helping others, but he had rarely had the chance to prove it. I learned from you too," he said quietly. Your quick thinking saved those children. I wouldn't have known what to do without you." Maya's eyes softened slightly. "We complement each other, it seems," she said. "Strength comes in many forms. Sometimes it is quiet and careful. Sometimes it is swift and decisive. Together, we can handle more than we could alone." They paused for a moment, both reflecting on the events of the day. The chaotic energy of the accident had faded, replaced by a calm sense of mutual respect. Ethan realized that working with Maya had given him a new kind of confidence, one that did not rely on bravado or loud words. Maya, in turn, recognized that beneath Ethan's bashfulness was a thoughtful, honest man who could act decisively when needed. The town of Red Willow returned to its usual rhythm, but for Maya and Ethan, the day had shifted in ways that neither could ignore. There was a new understanding between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of each other's abilities and integrity. Both had faced fear and uncertainty, and both had emerged stronger and more aware. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the wooden streets, Maya prepared to leave the marketplace. She had accomplished her trading for the day, and the quiet of the approaching evening promised rest. Ethan, too, mounted his horse, ready to head back to the outskirts of town. Before parting ways, Maya spoke, her voice carrying a mixture of challenge and encouragement. "Remember what you have learned today, Ethan. Courage, honesty, and respect are tested in action. Never forget that, and perhaps we may meet again under less chaotic circumstances." Ethan nodded eagerly, a small smile breaking across his face. I hope so," he said softly. I will remember, and I will try to do better every day." With that, they parted ways, each riding in opposite directions but carrying a newfound sense of understanding. For Maya, the experience reinforced the importance of observing carefully and judging people by their actions rather than assumptions. For Ethan, the day had been transformative. He had discovered that shyness was not a weakness, that honesty and careful attention could be more powerful than words, and that courage could emerge when it was needed most. As night approached, both of them reflected on the day's events. The town seemed quieter, the streets empty, and the moon rising above the wooden rooftops cast a silver glow over Red Willow. The small bond they had begun to form felt delicate yet meaningful. It was built not on casual conversation, but on shared experience, mutual respect, and the quiet recognition of each other's true character. Neither Maya nor Ethan knew what the future would bring. Perhaps they would meet again, perhaps not. But the events of the day had created a turning point, a moment when understanding and trust began to take root. They had learned from each other, relied on each other, and discovered strengths that neither had fully appreciated before. And so, as the town settled under the calm of the evening sky, the shy cowboy and the confident Apache woman carried with them the memory of a day that had tested their courage, revealed their character, and brought them closer to understanding each other. It was a beginning of a partnership, built not on words alone but on action, respect, and the quiet acknowledgement that sometimes people could surprise each other in the most unexpected ways. The next morning, the town of Red Willow woke slowly. The streets were quiet, with only a few early risers moving about their routines. The sun rose gently over the horizon, painting the wooden buildings in soft hues of orange and pink. The marketplace, which had been bustling yesterday, was now calm and peaceful. For most townspeople, it was an ordinary day, but for Maya and Ethan, the morning held a quiet significance. Maya walked through the marketplace, her boots stirring up small clouds of dust. Her wares were neatly arranged, and she greeted the few townspeople who had begun to arrive with polite smiles. Even after yesterday's events, she moved with the same confidence and composure that had always defined her. Yet there was a lightness in her step, a sense that something important had shifted. She had seen Ethan's courage, his honesty, and his care for others. That memory stayed with her, reminding her that appearances could be deceiving and that true character revealed itself in action. Ethan, meanwhile, had arrived at the outskirts of town to check on his horse. He had spent the night thinking about everything that had happened: Maya's words, her honesty, her strength, and the chaotic incident with the wagon and the horses. For the first time, he understood that courage was not measured by loudness or bravado, but by the ability to act with care and attention in moments that truly mattered. He had also realized that trust was something earned through consistent actions, and he wanted to prove to Maya that he could be worthy of hers. By mid-morning, the two found themselves near the town square once more. Ethan had gathered some supplies for a small errand, while Maya was arranging her wares in a more shaded spot, hoping to catch the attention of travelers. Their eyes met across the street, and for a moment, both felt the familiar tension of recognition. But this time it was different. The awkwardness and uncertainty of their first encounter had faded. In its place was a mutual respect, a quiet acknowledgement of each other's abilities and honesty. Ethan approached cautiously, keeping a respectful distance. "Good morning, Maya," he said softly, tipping his hat. His voice was steady, and there was a calmness to him that had not been there before. Maya nodded in greeting. "Good morning, Ethan," she replied. "It seems the town is quieter today. A welcome change, I think." "Yes," Ethan said, glancing around. It gives time to think." He paused, then added, "About yesterday. I wanted to say thank you for your guidance, for everything." Maya studied him carefully. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet determination that had grown since their first meeting. "You do not need to thank me," she said. "Yesterday was not just about guidance. It was about action and honesty. You showed both. That is rare, Ethan. That is worth acknowledging. Ethan's cheeks reddened slightly, but he felt a warmth inside that he had never felt before. I want to continue learning, he said quietly. Not just for myself, but I want to be someone worthy of respect, someone who can help when it matters. Maya's expression softened. You already are capable, Ethan, she said. But courage, respect, and understanding are not traits one can possess without thought. They grow with experience, with reflection, and with attention to others. You are learning. That is what matters. For a moment, they walked together in silence, side by side, letting the quiet of the town fill the space between their words. There was a subtle shift in their relationship, a gentle understanding that had been absent before. Both had faced fear, acted with care, and discovered qualities in themselves they had not fully appreciated. And now they could acknowledge those qualities in each other. Maya broke the silence first. Ethan, I want to ask you something, she said, her tone calm but deliberate. Do you understand why I asked you yesterday the question about your intentions? Ethan swallowed and nodded. Yes, he said quietly. At first, I didn't understand why, but now I think I do. You were testing me. You wanted to know if I was honest, if I respected you. If I could act with integrity even when nervous. Maya gave a small nod. Exactly. It was not to shame or embarrass you. It was to understand the man I was speaking to. And you answered honestly. That matters more than you realize. Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had feared that his nervousness might make him seem unworthy, or worse, untrustworthy. But now he understood that honesty, combined with action, could overcome misunderstanding. I promise, Maya, he said, his voice steady. I will always try to act with honesty and respect, not just toward you but toward everyone. I want to do right. Maya looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. Then you are learning well, she said, and that is the foundation for trust. Trust is not given lightly, Ethan. It is built with time, patience, and care. You have begun that process. Do not forget it. They continued walking through the marketplace, observing the quiet activity of the townspeople. Merchants arranged their goods, children played quietly in the street, and the occasional horse clopped past. It was a calm scene, but for Maya and Ethan, it carried the weight of reflection and understanding. After a while, they reached the edge of town, where a small stream flowed. The gentle sound of water over rocks provided a peaceful background. They paused there, standing side by side. Maya reached into her pack and pulled out a small bundle of herbs, offering one to Ethan. These are good for calming nerves, she said. You might find them helpful when you feel anxious or uncertain. Ethan accepted the bundle with a grateful smile. Thank you, he said softly. I will remember this. Maya nodded. Remember, Ethan, it is not just the herbs that bring calm. It is understanding oneself, understanding others, and acting with integrity. That is the true strength. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully. I think I understand. And I think I understand more about myself too. That shyness, my hesitation, it does not define me. Courage and honesty do. Maya smiled faintly, a warmth in her eyes. Well said, she said. You are learning, and that is the most important step of all. For the next few hours, they walked together, talking quietly about life in the town, about the lessons they had learned from the day before, and about the importance of respect and trust. There were no misunderstandings now, no awkward pauses, only a growing sense of mutual understanding. They began to see each other not as strangers or curiosities, but as companions on a shared journey of learning and growth. As the sun began to dip low in the sky, casting long shadows over the town, they returned to the marketplace. Maya packed her remaining goods, preparing to leave for the evening. Ethan stayed nearby, ensuring that her path was clear and that no harm came to her or her horse. The townspeople, who had observed their interactions over the past 2 days, now regarded them with a quiet respect. They saw the strength of character, the honesty, and the courage that both Maya and Ethan displayed. Before parting ways, Maya turned to Ethan. "Remember what we have discussed," she said gently. "Courage, honesty, respect, and patience. These are the qualities that guide a person, and sometimes they are the qualities that build friendship and trust. Never forget them." Ethan nodded earnestly. "I won't forget," he said softly. I will try every day to live by them, and I hope we can continue to learn from each other." Maya's eyes softened. "Perhaps we will," she said. "Time will tell. For now, know that you have begun the path, and that is a step worth taking." With a final nod, Maya mounted her horse and began riding toward the edge of town. Ethan watched her go, feeling a sense of accomplishment and hope. He had faced his fears, acted with integrity, and discovered the value of honesty and courage. And in Maya, he had found a guide, a companion, and a reminder that understanding and respect could overcome misunderstanding and awkwardness. As the evening settled over Red Willow, Ethan finally mounted his own horse and began to ride toward his home on the outskirts of town. The air was cool and calm, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and freshly turned earth. He thought about the lessons of the past 2 days, about the quiet power of courage and honesty, and about the potential of trust and friendship. Maya, riding through the gentle twilight, reflected on the shy cowboy she had met. She thought about his honesty, his careful attention, and his courage in the face of fear. She realized that while appearances could be misleading, true character always shone through when tested. And she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that perhaps, in Ethan, she had found someone who could be counted on, someone who could grow and learn just as she had. By the time night fell, the town of Red Willow lay under a blanket of stars. The marketplace was quiet, the streets empty, and the town itself seemed at peace. Yet for Maya and Ethan, the events of the past days had created a quiet bond, a foundation of respect, trust, and understanding that neither could ignore. It was a bond that had begun in misunderstanding, strengthened in action, and solidified through reflection. And though the future remained unknown, both of them carried with them the certainty that honesty, courage, and respect were not just words. They were the pillars of character, the guides to action, and the seeds of trust and friendship. In the quiet of the evening, as the wind whispered through the streets, and the moon cast silver light over the wooden rooftops, Maya and Ethan each felt a sense of hope. A hope that understanding could grow, that trust could be built, and that even in a small frontier town, two people could find connection, respect, and the beginnings of a meaningful friendship. And so, the story of the shy cowboy and the confident Apache woman reached its gentle conclusion, not with grand declarations, but with quiet understanding, mutual respect, and the promise of growth that comes when people truly see each other for who they are.